What would you trade in order to make your deepest desires a reality? How much would you be willing to barter in order to have what you want? Whether it's money, love, fame, or power that you crave, would you bargain your soul to have it? How about your memories? What about the life of another person? If these questions intrigue you, then boy, do we have the deal of a lifetime for you. Well, not us, but rather a certain anomaly who's very, very interested in the art of the deal. We've all heard the old adage of a deal with the devil, meaning a pact with someone potentially shady in order to get what you want. Not only are you compromising your own principles when you make a deal like this, you're also running the risk of that deal coming back to haunt you when it's time to pay the devil his dues. And believe us, the devil always comes to collect. Of course, you've never made a deal with the actual devil, and if you had, it's likely you wouldn't live long enough to warn people not to make the same mistake. But we've all heard the legends, Beelzebub appearing to those in dire need of help and offering them salvation. Shaking that outstretched, clawed hand normally results in the desperate person getting what they need, but also agreeing to give Satan something along the lines of their soul or firstborn child, or sometimes something even worse. The point being that dealing with the devil often extracts a heavy price, and one you might not be so willing to pay if you could see the terms more clearly. Which brings us to SCP-738, also known as the Devil's Deal. Although this SCP has no relation to the actual biblical Lord of Darkness himself, as far as we know anyway, that nickname should paint a very clear picture for you of how this entity operates. Kept in 3 linked containment chambers, SCP-738 is guarded at all times by armed Foundation personnel when not in use. Strangely for an anomaly with such a terrifying reputation, it appears as an elegant 3-piece set of furniture, the kind you might find in a fancy office belonging to a slick CEO. The set consists of a desk, 1 straight-back chair, and another more extravagant office chair, styled to look like a throne, all featuring brass detailing and exquisite velvet padding in a deep royal purple. When kept apart, these objects seem to be little more than just expensive pieces of office furniture, examples of quality craftsmanship that would likely cost you an arm and a leg to afford, but nothing overtly sinister or anomalous. Until, that is, the 3 pieces are put together and you take a seat. If someone sits down opposite the throne, within the desk between them, then they had best be ready to bargain, because once you sit down, you will find yourself faced with an anomalous entity across from you on the throne. While many of the D-classes the Foundation has placed before this entity have described it as being charming or even seductive, descriptions of the entity's appearance varies wildly between subjects. In fact, it would seem that the entity deliberately appears differently to everyone that sees it, their very own personalized devil with which to strike a deal. After all, this business is personal. Additionally, the entity cannot be observed by anyone except for those sitting in the anomalous chair of SCP-738. For anyone not sitting in the special chair, the most they'll see of the entity is the throne shifting as it leans backwards or sits up. It isn't interested in being seen by anyone who isn't part of the transaction. This entity is clearly quite the negotiator and doesn't waste any time in getting to the meat of the conversation. During tests by the Foundation, recordings have been made of the entity's voice, making all manner of enticing offers and promises to whomever is sitting before it. The entity will produce parchment from the desk, writing up what looks to be a contract with a quill and ink pot. If whomever is sitting in the opposite chair makes a formal request to the entity, it will cease its previous barrage of offers and take a brief pause before suggesting a price. During their first attempt to gauge the nature and effects of SCP-738, the Foundation sent one of its researchers into a room containing the desk, throne, and chair. According to his report, he saw a man sitting behind the desk, wearing a sharp red and gold colored business suit. The entity immediately bombarded the man with potential deals they could strike, offering him greater recognition and respect for his research, the love of the woman the man wanted, and even offering him the chance to join the O5 Council. Refusing to be coerced into any of these deals, the researcher left the room and seemed to suffer no adverse effects for his refusal. Since this initial incident, when testing the behavior and effects of SCP-738, The Foundation primarily uses D-Class personnel. As we all know by now, these personnel are considered disposable, having been recruited from prisons around the world, and ones testing SCP-738 are fitted with an explosive collar, just in case. In one instance, one of these Class D personnel placed before the SCP-738 entity reported that this time, it had taken on the appearance of a beautiful, seductive woman. During the initial proposals made by the SCP-738 entity, the inmate was offered his freedom. The price of freedom is often high, but the Class D may not have been expecting the price to be the death of his best friend. But the inmate agreed to the terms of the deal he'd been offered and vanished shortly after. 5 hours later, though, he was recaptured by Foundation personnel. When another member of Class D personnel, a non-native English speaker, sat down to bargain with SCP-738, the entity communicated with him in his first language. Their deal, while similar to the previous test, used more specific wording. The Class D inmate asked for the power to never be held in a cell again, rather than just for freedom. The price asked for by the SCP-738 entity this time was every memory of the man's mother. After he accepted, an incident broke out which resulted in the inmate's death, as well as that of 12 Foundation guards. The next test the Foundation conducted into the effects of SCP-738 involved yet another Class D, this time utilizing an inmate with dyslexia and a mental disability, who reported that the entity appeared to take the form of a large pink rabbit. Once again adapting to the subject before it, the entity drew crude pictograms on its parchment, trying to convey a deal to the latest Class D to sit across the desk from it. There were a few words scattered about the page in English, but mostly unrelated insults aimed at the inmate's intelligence, or questioning the man's understanding of the deal the entity was proposing. The entity offered the man a sloppy Joe, stating the price to be Mopsy, the name given to a toy that the inmate had smuggled into the Foundation and been allowed to keep. Upon accepting the deal, a fine china plate appeared in front of the man, with the promised sandwich upon it. The man quickly finished the food that the entity had provided, only to become distressed when he realized that Mopsy had vanished. Shortly after the test had concluded, Foundation staff issued the Class D with another toy identical to the one that had been bargained away from him. However, as soon as he named the new toy Mopsy, it too disappeared, once again causing the inmate a great deal of emotional distress. Further testing found that there was little that could damage the furniture of SCP-738. Foundation researchers even tried exposing it to explosives, to no effect. Despite appearing to be crafted from mahogany, neither the desk nor the chairs were able to catch fire and burn. Gunshots did not tear through the woodwork as one would expect, and even a mechanical wood chipper did nothing to cause even the slightest of damage. There was, however, one thing that did. When directly attacking the desk with an axe, a single gash was left scored into the mahogany surface by the bladed head. This did, unfortunately, lead to the death of the personnel wielding said axe, and afterwards the mark left in the desk began gradually healing. Changing their approach, the Foundation ceased sending Class D personnel to make deals with whatever devil appeared sitting at the desk. Instead, a researcher took the seat opposite, and before the entity began its usual stream of offers to fulfill deep desires, the researcher asked a simple question: "What are you?" The SCP-738 entity took the form of a huge snake and answered, "I'm sorry. It's against policy to divulge personal details, but may I interest you in..." It is unknown what the entity offered the researcher, but the session was called to be halted shortly after, and the Foundation researcher was institutionalized pending psychiatric review. The final test of SCP-738 involved a Mr. Sheldon Katz, senior counsel of the Foundation's legal department, who presented the entity with a fully legally watertight document, stating he was not acting on behalf of the SCP Foundation and was testing SCP-738 of his own free agency. Mr. Katz reported that, in this instance, the SCP-738 entity assumed the form of a professor who had taught Sheldon during his first year of law school, but didn't include any information as to what sort of deal the entity had offered him. After 41 hours of debate, during which a 900-page-long agreement between him and SCP-738 was drafted, Mr. Katz eventually passed out from sheer, overwhelming exhaustion. A red leather envelope was found on him when he was removed from the testing room, containing a handwritten note and smelling heavily of sulfur. The note simply read, "Please come back anytime. I haven't had so much fun in years." The incidents involving SCP-738 all follow a strikingly similar pattern. After adjusting to the person before it, both appearing in a form specific to them and communicating with them in such a way that they will best understand, the SCP-738 entity will attempt to entice their latest emptor with their deepest desires. When the person opposite them makes a request, the entity brings up the question of price. While they can be negotiated with, it will insist that the price be of equal value to what is being requested, like for like, perhaps even a soul for a soul. It is worth noting that the entity that sits in that throne will not always follow through on deals if they determine the person making the request does not want the object enough, or if they request an object for someone else as a way of trying to dodge paying the full price. It seems that this entity, being the bargainer that it is, does not indulge requests that are made to affect other people, or for items that can easily be passed on to others. Accepting a deal with whatever devil appears across that desk from you will make your wish come true. Isn't that how deals with the devil always go? After all, you are certain to get whatever you ask for, anything your heart desires, if you're willing to pay the right price for it. Just make sure that you always read the fine print of that agreement before you sign, because the price won't always be something you're willing to pay. Now check out SCP-1879, Indoor Salesman, and SCP-662, Butler's Handbell for more anomalies that'll make you an offer you can't refuse.